Yo, so today I just wanted to talk about a lot of other things, honestly. I want to talk about what's going on in my life. I also want to talk about more broad topics because I constantly just talk about myself, and I mean, that's fine, I guess. But I also want to make this channel a little bit more, like I said, more broad, more, I want to address topics that are um, of the interest of a lot of people, not just my life, you know what I'm saying? So today, I'm in my living room. I hope you guys can hear me well. I don't really know. I'm like recording this from my iPad, as you all know. And yeah, today I want to talk about providence. I want to talk about implementing Stoicism in, how I implement Stoicism or try to implement Stoicism without being a religious person. So if you have read Stoicism, you probably know that Stoicism is pretty much or started being a religious philosophy. They used to believe in like Zeus and also I guess the cosmos or like the universe, which is pretty interesting. A lot of people still believe in like the cosmos or the universe, and it kind of makes sense, right? And every time I read whatever I read in Stoicism, like mainly I started doing this in Providence, like Seneca and Providence. I started pretty much like separating things in different categories, like how I would approach providence, right? Or at least what Seneca said on providence, if there were a God, if there is a God, because it's something that sadly we cannot prove. So if there is a God, how would I go about providence? If there is no God, how would I view providence, or how would I view things that are hard in the world, right? Things that are just hardship that happens to us in life. How would I be able to deal with that if I know that there's not a God? Because if you have read Providence, you'll probably know that all throughout the whole I guess letter, he talks about bad things happening to good men, mainly because God wants us, or wants good men. Not to preach that I'm a good man or anything like that, but I don't want to claim that. But he says that bad things happen to good men, or rather, things happen to good men because God wants them to be more virtuous. You know what I'm saying? So I like this idea of like, anything that happens to a good man. He says this in the book, Seneca. He says that anything that happens to a good man will not change him. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people would think like when something bad happens to a good person who pretty much doesn't deserve that, you're probably thinking that there's someone out there who hates you, who's trying to like pretty much turn you against your morals or your values, right? They're trying to get you to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit more selfish, a little bit more hateful and stuff like that. I like the fact that he says that whatever happens to a good man will take its own like his own colors. So if something good happens to you, if something bad happens to you, whatever happens to you, whatever happens to a good man, he will know how to deal with it. He will not give into, you know what I'm saying, all the negativity that could at some point maybe take his life, in a sense, or like kind of like hit him, you know. And I like to think that way. I like to think that, like he also said, sorry if I'm probably gonna butcher this, but he said something along the lines of, I think the rain cannot change the flavor of the minerals in the sea, meaning that whatever bad thing happens to a man, it will not change the man's value. It will not make the man bad, or that's at least my understanding, because he, like that little, the little rain, the hardship that he's receiving, it's gonna be sort of like outnumbered, or outperformed by the man's virtue, by the man's morals. You know what I'm saying? And it really helped me, like I said in previous videos, just building this, because of course we all have different perceptions of what is hard in life, right? For some people, some more extreme things are only hard, you know what I'm saying? And anything below that, it's just not hard. Like for example, if you haven't watched my other videos, I used to be like, I started getting this job at a call center, not in English, just in Spanish, because I tend to be a a little bit more socially awkward and socially anxious, right? So I went for that because I wanted to sort of like um, make myself uncomfortable, you know, try to force myself to grow, right? And you know, I like thinking that whatever happens to me cannot change me, you know, whatever bad things, whatever, I don't know, people who try to hurt me, all of those things will not change me if I'm actually, you know, a man who has been trained in a sense. Because I've been reading a lot of Epictetus, and he constantly talks about like being trained, stuff like that, or like sort of train yourself to be more virtuous, and sort of it helps me. And today I wanted to talk about like both providence and how I sort of take in those advice, that advice, sorry, sort of how I sort of take in that advice without being a religious person. Because obviously, if you're like, I don't know, Muslim, or if you're a Christian, you kind of can take in that advice and say like, okay, you know, I know that Epictetus, Seneca on Providence is talking about probably like Zeus or whoever he's talking about. I forgot. But you know, when he says, or when he calls out a god, you can easily think like, oh, it's probably the Christian God. I can just view it that way. You know what I'm saying? Because it probably works like that. Or some other people can, you know, just introduce any other god that they have, like Buddha or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Don't want to be disrespectful, but as you might know, I'm not really that well versed in other religions, but I feel like for those people it would be a little bit easier to take in, you know what I'm saying? And it also helped me to a certain extent to think that there's a God, like there's some providence in the world, that somebody's looking down on me and trying to make me, you know, go through hardship because they love me and they want me to be stronger. That's actually so nice. So it's like, that's such a nice thought for me, to me, sorry, to think. However, I'm not a believer, so in that sense, it kind of like goes against it, or it feels weird. You know what I'm saying? So I have different, like I literally write so much every time I read, so I have different ways to deal with it, like how providence would work in a world in which a God exists, and how providence would work in a world in which nothing happens for providence, but happens for a reason, like for a cause, right? Because I'm in like my deterministic era, like I just believe in determinism, like whatever happens was determined to be that way because of previous actions. And it honestly it really helps me kind of like comply, or you know, just play my part better, because it's like this could not happen any other way, you know. Even if I like make a mistake on my own, it could not happen any other way. Like my judgment, my character, my person was supposed to be that way, was supposed to react that way in that situation. So nothing could have been different. So I just comply with whatever happens to me, right? So how I view it is that, you know, the lack of a subject, because like I said, Seneca says that the subject of these actions, the subject of these bad things that happen to a good man, are pretty much a god. Like it's a god or whatever, like a high entity, you know what I'm saying, that is trying to make us a little bit more, like a little stronger, trying to toughen us up, so that we can actually both get to know each other, get to know what we're capable, and be able to kind of like, you know, be more resilient to hardship, the same way a man treats their child, their children, or sorry, his children in this case. You know, because I guess, you know, when you have a kid, you kind of want them to be stronger. You don't want them to grow up too cuddle, too soften. You know what I'm saying? And it sort of makes sense, right? But when you don't believe in God, when you don't believe in a God, it's kind of hard to take in this advice. But for me, it was sort of easy in a sense, because I was thinking of how the maybe inexistence, I think that's a word, sorry, of a God, or of a subject rather, does not change the result of the action. You know what I'm saying? Hypothetically, if there's a God who, like, I don't know, throws at me, let's say, a disease, you know what I'm saying, that really makes me, I don't know, go through hell for a short, like over a, you know, for a certain lapse of time, and that thing toughens me. It would literally do the same. It would have the same result as if something randomly had just given me that, like some random action in the past. Let's say maybe my old habits that were determined by who I was raised, that were also determined by, I don't know, many other things. You know, my judgment, etc. That's pretty much how determinism works. It's just like a bunch of um, like cause and results, stuff like that. So hypothetically, if that was the situation too, the result would be the same. You know, if a god throws at you at the seas and you become stronger because you now know how to, you now enjoy life more because you know what health means to you. You know, you're not overly stimulated with fortune, or good fortune rather, to the point that, you know what I'm saying, you don't enjoy it. But now that you went through all of those things, you're both more resilient, and you're more joyful because you enjoy things that were mundane before better, right? That would be the result that the sort of like action or process kind of gave you. Hypothetically, if there wasn't a god, it would be the same. You know what I'm saying? But obviously, when you have like the belief that there's somebody out there who actually sort of like determined that, or like not determined that, but like somebody up there kind of like made it so that you actually go through that process and get that exact action, or like that exact result of like growing as, you know, a more resilient, stronger man. You know what I'm saying? It sort of helps you more because it kind of makes you feel like you're being like, you know, for some reason, it's, I guess that's the appealing thing about religion. It just, sorry for that, it just makes you feel like you are being taken care of, you know, by someone. And that, you know, it just backs up all those theories even more. So it can be hard for some people. It was a little bit hard for me to even like try to implement these things, but that's how I see it. You know, the inexistence of a subject does not change the result of the action, correct? And by the way, I'm not trying to like preach to be like a stoic or anything like that. I've read pretty much very little Stoicism, but I really like it, and the little I've read has helped me a lot so far, you know. So you know, I want you to take it with a grain of salt. If it can help you, sure. If it cannot, I just really have the urge of expressing myself. You know, I want to express myself. I want people to sort of like hear what I have to say for a reason. You know what I'm saying? I've been doing this on my own for a long time. I guess writing, in a sense, is pretty much this. But when you, like, I often see people doing pretty much this on the internet, and it's kind of cool to see that other people would, like, you know, sort of like challenge their points and stuff like that, and listen to them. That's actually kind of cool, and I guess that's what I'm looking for. But yeah, and like I said, Providence has helped me a lot. Like, just that little piece of, like, that bunch of words really kind of change how somebody can view the world or view hardship, you know. And like I said, if you're religious, I'm pretty sure it will resonate with you even more, you know. And yeah, one other thing that I really like about Seneca on Providence was that he talked about, I think I already mentioned this, right? I probably already mentioned this, but I just really like the belief that whatever happens to a good man happens because a god or whatever, you know, thing out there is helping them to be stronger. You know what I'm saying? And nowadays I don't see it that way. Of course, I see it more like whatever happens to me, it was determined to happen to me. You know what I'm saying? Previous actions, previous results determine both me and whatever thing that interacts with me, with my judgment, to interact together and, you know, have a certain result. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm able to explain it correctly. I'm very I'm very raw in this sort of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? I really want to read more. Today I read a lot. Today I read like Seneca on, what did I read on? Seneca on, I think, What's Within Our Power or something like that. I just really like, you know, reading things slowly. That's why I haven't really finished all Stoicism yet, because I really like really reading things thoroughly. You know, I read Seneca on Epictetus on what's within our control, something like that. Sorry, I'm butchering that like right now. But as soon as I finished it, I started writing about it, like both my notes on what I understood and both how I view it. You know what I'm saying? He still talked about, you know, a God kind of like giving you sort of a piece of, you know, I guess, what would you call it, like a piece of them, like Zeus giving us a piece of them, and trying to, I guess, make us more resilient. You know, it's like, oh, here it is, a piece of me. This is your reason. You can, you know, use it to pretty much avoid any pain in this world of that could come from things that you cannot control and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, the reason why I haven't finished reading Stoicism yet is because I take really long to read. I believe that I only count a book as read when it becomes part of me. You know, for example, so far I've read a few books, and I can tell you right now that most of those books, or most of the teachings that I got from those books, have become part of me. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the point in learning and in reading. You know what I'm saying? Like, to take in something that changes your judgment, that changes the way you view things, that changes the way you are. I also read Ikigai, and this is a book that honestly did not really become part of me. That's why I say, like, I feel like I haven't read it, just because whatever I got from it, it's not something that I constantly go to in daily life. You know what I'm saying? And I forgot who introduced this idea, but there was some book that talks about it, that talks about education not being just a random thing that you just study and, you know, kind of like go back to it from time to time, but rather something that you study and becomes a part of you, that changes your judgment and stuff like that. And I think that's how I view books. That's how I view reading. That's why it takes so long. You know what I'm saying? I want to make sure that whatever I'm reading, I'm actually getting the most out of it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. My back really hurts from, I guess, all that sitting that I did throughout the week, just working at a call center. Oh yeah, and like I said, I know that a lot of people will think that, you know, what I'm going through is, I'm not going through any hard thing right now, by the way, because I guess, you know, I got comfortable in what was supposed to be uncomfortable, right? Like I told you, a lot of people who I thought were like competent for the job left. Some of them left because they didn't like it, and some of them left because they felt overwhelmed. You know what I'm saying? I went into it not thinking like, oh, this sucks, but oh, this is gonna train me, and it sucks. You know what I'm saying? Because I was like, you know, I'm getting into a terrain, I guess, that it's unknown, that it's probably gonna be tough for somebody like me, and I want it that way. I want to do my best to keep my peace, to keep my happiness, even when I'm being, I don't know, insulted, even when I'm being talked down, even when I'm stressed out, or when I'm doing something that I don't want to do. You know what I'm saying? That's why I said that, you know, this is really insightful and conducive for me, because it's training me. It's training me to, you know, implement my stoicism in a sense. And like I said, anything, regardless of how small, I believe it can train you. You know what I'm saying? This thing is training me, even though for some people it would be like definitely not something that they would consider hard. It is nowadays not something that I consider hard. After literally 2 days, I think I pretty much got used to it. And of course it is, because there are a lot of other things that I can derive happiness from, you know, in my life. And that's actually one of the points of stoicism, you know what I'm saying? Even though certain factors I, you know, dislike, I try to, you know, avoid, what was that? Hedonistic adaptation, I forgot, but I try to avoid that and actually value, you know, the things that I have, which are my family, my girlfriend, the habits that I have, the process that I'm going through. I appreciate all of those things, and it helps me, you know. I think that's the meaning of it all. Like, at least not the meaning of life, by the way, that's not what I'm saying. Like, the meaning of it all, the meaning of everything that I'm doing. Because of course, like any other person, I'm somebody who has certain I'm looking out the window right now. Somebody who has high expectations of themselves. I'm somebody who has big goals, but I'm trying to learn to comply with the present, to not complain with whatever is happening right now, because it cannot be any other way. I can obviously strive to change it, and I'm doing so, but you know, I should enjoy the little, not the little, by the way, the stuff that I have right now, because it's not little, definitely not little at all. I'm a very fortunate person, and I hope I'm, you know, become wise and strong enough to always feel fortunate of where I am, you know, for both what I lived and what I'm living, in a sense. So yeah, that's a nice way to finish this video, I think. Every time I record one of these videos, I feel like I'm falling short in what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I wish that was the end of the video, but I still want a job. I want to continue yapping about my life. Just to leave it here, you know, to make it a little bit more personal after just my, you know, talk about Stoicism and Seneca and providence. I want to talk about how, you know, I was talking to my mom today, and I was joking around telling her, like, would you like to have a grandson? Of course, I'm not gonna give her a grandson, but pretty much that's what led to the other part of the conversation, in which she said, like, once you become a economist, you could think about having you know, a son. Sorry if you can hear the background noises. So she said that once you become an economist, you can, you know, like have a son and stuff like that, and give me grandchildren and stuff. And of course that makes complete sense, right? But the thing is that it's really bleak, because I don't know if I want that, you know? I don't know if I want to become an economist. Of course I love economy. It's actually a very fun subject. I remember it was like sort of my safe space. I think economy used to be the like the Stoicism back in the day, for me at least, because now I sort of shelter myself in Stoicism. Like, I shelter myself in books and all of this, and you know, I get obsessed over stuff. I once got obsessed over like economics, sorry, and you know, I told my mom that I wanted to be an economist, but sort of it's not what I want, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's what I want. I think what I enjoy the most is just thinking and talking. That's literally the two things that I enjoy the most. I feel like I get in a state of flow when I'm doing this, you know. That's why I have this urge of, like, even though I'm so inexperienced and so incompetent in terms of both speaking and, you know, my thoughts, my ideas are just too bad, you know, for somebody to be interested in them. But since I get in this stage, since I enjoy it so much, it's just something that I cannot avoid. It's like it just calls me, you know, calls for me. So that's pretty much it. Sure, at some point I will try to find it, like, figure it out. I've been trying to figure it out. I definitely want to continue making more videos like this, because I want to build my, you know, my personal brand, and just be able to talk about these things to people. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if I make money out of this. I don't care if I like, if this goes viral or anything like that. But like I said, it's just something that I really like to do. You know, I just get in this stage. Even when I talk to my friends and stuff like that. I remember one of the things that I wanted to do back in the day when I learned English was just do this. Literally just do this. Talk, have a podcast, I said. I used to tell this friend that I had, I want to have a podcast. I want to learn English. I want to have a good English to just have a podcast. And she used to tell me like, your English is pretty good already. And I was like, no, it's not. My English has gotten pretty good from them. So I guess now I am. By the way, I'm a little sick. So in case you hear me bad, like a little nose here or anything like that, is because my nose stuffed. I mean, my nose is always stuffed, but now I sound weird. So yeah, but I enjoy it, you know. Now I have what I wanted to have back in the day. I wanted to have a good English. I wanted to be a little bit more competent with my words and a little bit more competent with my ideas. And I think I have achieved that, you know, regardless of whether or not I'm, you know, being heard, regardless of whether or not I'm being effective, I am doing my best. And I enjoy doing my best. I hope you guys have a good day. I hope you guys have had a good week. This week, like I documented it, was pretty good, was pretty insightful. I actually did five sales, I think, yesterday. I think around 5 or 2 sales yesterday. So it was decently well. I also want to talk about praise. We're gonna schedule that because I don't want to talk about that right now. But yes, praise. We'll talk about that soon. Take care.